moment.
Welcome very, very much to Conversations, and I think we may be in for something a little bit unique today because my dear friend,
Jerry Spivack.
Jerry Spivack, we were friends from way back. He's come and he's very insistent. He's a very powerful intellect, and he was the president of the New York chapter of the World Future Society for a long time. He was at Bell Labs, and he's a major intellectual person who understands technology very well, and we were colleagues at another seminar for quite a while at Columbia University seminar, and now he comes in, I'm all ready to talk to him. I got a big thing about the World Future. That was a major thing, the World Future Society, and Buckminster Fuller and everybody were part of that, and all the luminaries of the time were part of that. But apparently he wants to, instead of talking about all the luminaries of the time, he wants to talk about me. So that's a little bit sort of different than normal. But so I don't quite know what to do. But what do you think we're going to, what's your thinking, Jerry? I mean, you said you want to do something a little bit different.
Absolutely.
We've done programs with the others
and
about the intellectuals. Now, why don't we talk about Harold?
Now, yes, exactly. And the thing is that you have been a contributor to media for such a long period of time.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have not been explored in a way that should do dignity to who you really are. So we were going to start, in fact,
My mother might agree with you.
Exactly. And
Mother,
we were going
old
to talk.
Mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were going to talk about them. In fact,
I had no idea. I thought we were going to talk
born in Detroit.
Yeah.
And you were telling me a little bit about what it was like growing up over there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I was born in Detroit, middle class. My dad was a lawyer, University of Michigan Medical College. My mother was a teacher. My mother was, I don't know if anybody else feels that way. I think there might be some few who do. She was the best mother in the history of the universe. Absolutely wonderful person and very, very informative. And my dad was a lawyer. And all of that in Detroit, middle class, yeah, in Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, I was born in 1935.
And what was it like growing up there?
Well, I think let's see. I think it through. That's a more nuanced question than people maybe might think. I think I was really favored in the way I was raised. And it doesn't have to do with like being in a big mansion or so with the old servants and all that kind of stuff, which I guess would have been nice and everything. But when I was raised, I had two elder sisters and a wonderful dog. And we had a lady who was in the house who sort of took care of us like a second mother and everything. But I think the thing about it that was the best was it was so warm. And there was so much intelligent humor going on and so much camaraderie. My sisters were the best sisters in the world, my big sister. And then I had another sister, only 2 years older than me. She used to beat up on me with regularity, like a sister immediate your age. And my other sister was older. And, you know, I had a privileged upbringing in that regard. Warm, friendly. We had a clock, a WASP. We were white Anglo-Saxon Protestant stock, as it were. And we had a clock on the mantelpiece, and it used to go on the quarter hour ago. Some of you people may be aware of it. I want to talk about it, too, because we just watched a program the other day, and I would like to talk about it, even though it's a different thing. But the investiture of Queen Elizabeth, when she was 24 years old or so. They had a thing on the BBC. It was amazing what went on when she was brought into it. But we had on the mantle of there was a fireplace, and we had bookshelves. We had the Harvard Classics and the Great Book Series and that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of warmth and everything, kidding, joshing, and intellectual talk, I guess you would say. But we had a clock, and it used to go like this. And so some of you people might recognize it. It goes on the quarter hour, go ding dong, ding dong, and then on the quarter, from quarter hour to the half hour goes. I'll go through the whole thing, 4 quarters. Ding dong, 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 and then it will go dong, dong for the hours. Big Ben. The reminiscent of British background,
which I understand your family had some British background.
Well, they're Americans, but they were from an a WASP background, English background, and my grandfather was from London or from England, and the other people were of an English or Scottish background, which is a very big cross to bear in this world when you're trying to get some sort of understanding of how the world ought to be set up and running, because the world never has been in a systems kind of way, and gosh knows it should be and everything, but it's never been what would be called in a real systems way of understanding just. It's been a world of zero-sum. Political authority was whoever could hit the other guy on the head and assume authority because he had a bigger sword or a bigger whatever, and that it's a grim history. James Joyce had Daedalus say, "History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken," and I'm of an opinion now that we may be actually, after a long 200,000-year sojourn as a species, we may be awakening to an elementary, just, fulfilled order. But being in the fact that I was born into the end of that period called the Homo sapien era, I think I was privileged, at the best sense of the word. Not having great wealth and everything, but privileged in terms of the warmth of the situation. And it was always encouraging learning.
But it also sounds like, for some reason, you were also brought into a feeling of a need for social justice.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess everyone is, aren't they, when you come into the, I don't know how to put it. Yeah, because, but everybody was taken with well, there was a war going on in Europe that was horrible, and my dad had been part of the Navy in the First World War, and the grim thing are the fellas going over in the trenches fighting each other and all that kind of baloney going on and all that kind of thing. I forget what you asked me then.
About the social justice, and you somehow always reverberating.
I guess it was in the thing. Ultimately, would be my sister used to beat up on me regularly. It was like Lucy would beat up on.
No wonder you had a need for social justice.
Yeah, right. I say, yeah, right. That kind of thing. But they're still living, and they're older. But my sister is 5 years older. My other one was 2 years older. But they were wonderful, and it was real warmth and everything, and so that was it. But there was a lot going on,
and somehow you moved from, when you began to study, you took an interest in geography and the whole world, and
well, yeah, we used to talk about things like justice and or intellectual thinking. We had the Harvard classics and everything, and you were encouraged to think and have
you were
discussion.
reading some of these.
Yeah, it was there, and there was an attic full of books and stuff. We had up in the attic, my grandfather. Do they still have attics in the
some
world?
Places, sure.
They used to have a thing. You'd have a basement. You have stuff. Then you'd have a ground floor, and then you'd have a bedroom floor. And then above that, the houses would be going like this, right, to a peak. And up there would be maybe still just loose, 2x4s and stuff and everything, and plank. And you'd have all kinds of stuff from the past that you'd stick up in the attic. And he had put stuff there. That would be the father from London, actually, a grandfather from London. And we used to go up there, and they had old records, and he had a thing called a magic lantern. That would be like what you would call a
slide projector.
A slide projector, but this was a great big thing, and he had these things, these plates, and he had pictures of the catacombs of Rome and things like that. And we'd go up there, and there was a record. There's one record we used to play, and you put it on, and this would be a record about like this, and we had a machine that would play it and everything, and it says, and it came out, and the voice says, scratchy, and it said, "This is a demonstration recording of the new Columbia talking machine." That would be like a record player, and everything. Then we were born into the speed up of everything. It was like a pregnancy, or what do you call it? A quickening in a pregnancy or something, in terms of the societal order. And the war was I was born in 35, so it was the 45. I was only 10, and finally that Second World War had been concluded and everything. So thank God there was a period of optimism, I guess, and coming out of having won, as they say. They had that bomb had been dropped and everything, and that war was, thank goodness, over. My dad had served in the First World War in the Navy, and so that's it. A regular old. Oh, and my grandmother was his mother was the first woman ever to graduate from, as I understand it. It may be not quite true, but I think it is. She was the first woman ever to graduate from the University of Michigan, where there was a lot of attention in the family, to Ann Arbor, and in the medical college in 1888, she broke the glass ceiling for women being doctors. They weren't supposed to be doctors. I may be overstating that being the breaking a glass ceiling, but she was a doctor, and she lived on 16th Street in Detroit. That would have been downtown.
Sure.
And it was another age, because she was, coming from a different age, and the layout of the town was different. But she lived on 16th Street, and I understand it's not real clear and everything, but it seems to me it was the case that Mr. Ford, who was a fantastic figure in terms of the history of Detroit, because he invented the assembly line and the Ford automobile plant, and Willow Run. He had even set up the pattern for what was to become the arsenal of democracy at Willow Run. There was nothing during the first. We'd remember probably from in the Second World War. There was nothing but war production. Everything was war, because there was no new products being made at all. It was just all steel and Willow Run and tanks and and airplanes and all the things to fight the fascists in Europe and everything. So anyway, I'm rambling.
But there was one other thing, which was also part of that growing up, which you started to introduce with this magic lantern, which was media, which was growing exponentially. I mean, you had radio, you had the movies, even celebrating some of the war effort and things of that nature.
Yeah, First World War.
And second, you had John Wayne and all these other people.
Well, that was more into my era. Those things up in the attic were from my grandfather.
I know, but you were appreciating and growing up with this new media.
Oh yeah,
and
when I can remember, he was a grand fellow, because you had a basement, and she would go, and you had little kids. You got little kids, they're 5 years old and stuff, and little squirts, and he would set up in the basement planks of wood on cinder block or something for these kids. They're 4 and 5, 6 years old and that. And he would show a slideshow. And it was a thing that had a almost smoke coming out of it, that you to put a slide up on a screen or something. And he had pictures of the catacombs of Rome and all of this. And he would be showing that to these little 4-year-old kids and everything. And I remember it fondly, There was a garage.
Which is interesting, because you took a tremendous interest in what the world was about and what geography was about.
Well, I don't know. I just grew up, and I think it was sort of hands off. They didn't try to push anything. There was no discipline. It was implied, but there was no, no spanking or any of that nonsense. It was just all, like that. And again, 2 older sisters that were great, the best sisters in the world. So it was very privileged that way, yeah.
And I understand that you met your wife at a later stage, of course, at a later
Well,
stage.
yeah.
But you accidentally met her.
Well, there was a oh yeah, I got drafted into the United States Army.
Really?
Yeah, and I was a terrible soldier. I was like Costello, of Abbott and Costello infamy, you know. And I'm not very good with structured things, you know, which I'd be a very bad engineer or anything where you have to be really paying attention to detail, which has a great quality of importance to the human condition. I wasn't. I was bouncing around and interested in everything and everything like that. But I used to try and explain, because I was just what they call a buck private, you know, young guy. I got drafted, and that's the bottom of the barrel, you know. You're just a you know, like a pledge in a fraternity or something. I did that and everything at college, but. And I would explain to the sergeants very thoughtfully that we could do things more appropriately and efficiently if we were more democratic, Sergeant. And the sergeant would say, "Get back in the line," and all that. So that was a little bit of a lesson learned
They weren't ready for innovation.
The world was not ready for democracy in a way where you had all these, you know, they were ready to have more, well, like slaves or something, you know. I mean, the world is not just. It's all very, very structured and all that kind of stuff and everything. But then I don't, and I got sent to Puerto Rico as a young man. And I'm a Borinconeer, as it happens. I don't know if you know. The honoring of military people for above the call of duty. I mean, the ultimate one is the Congressional Medal of Honor or something like that. And I'm not brave or anything like that, but actually, I just get out of duty. I was pretty good at getting away from doing anything, you know, where they're trying to order you to do things. I guess it was just a pain in the neck, I guess, probably in a certain way and everything. But anyway, I got a assignment to Puerto Rico, and the story was that there had been there's a ringing. Okay. The Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
Were honored by the United States governmental system and everything.
That was
for
a group
people.
of black aviators.
Yeah, aviators and officers of a black persuasion that I hated prejudice. I mean, I really hated it and everything like that. And they were, I mean, that was youthful. I mean, like that. But they were honored for the fact that they had persevered. Percy Sutton.
Yeah, I knew him.
I did too. I did program. He was a
wonderful
marvelous role model. He
Yes.
was a grand gentleman. Oh, my father used to take great delight. He died when he was only 48. I mentioned that. That was the average age for an American, a male.
Back then.
Back then. And he used to take great delight when... as they became my daughters, I mean my sisters, they were older, as they began to become like young women, and young men would come calling, and he used to take great delight. I can remember it when they would come in, and word had gotten out that the old man was there, and he, as fathers, I guess, will do with their daughters, he would guard them against some shenanigans or whatever that young man might be up to or something, and he would say, when they came in, and they would be coming in trembling to pick up Carol, my sister, or something, to go to a soda fountain or something, or whatever they did, and everything. And they would come in and they'd be trembling. These young men would become trembling, great big hulks of young men coming calling on what they call a date, like, you know, kind of, and everything. And he would say, and he took delight. So I don't know, maybe he was a sadist, I don't know. But he used to, they would come in and they'd be shaking in their boots. Because you mean your father is home? And he would say, "And what, young man, is your claim to fame.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
He would be laughing like a clown inside, and everything. That was, I don't know, he could have been a little bit more understanding of the poor fellow's plight. But anyway, that was part of the scene. But anyway, I was in the Army, and I used to get in trouble all the time for being a wise guy, I guess, and everything. And but I did get sent to Puerto Rico as there'd been a prejudice. I hate it, okay, and everything. But there's a prejudice. It seems to be people have the way of having prejudice against everything except their immediate family or something, or their immediate friends or lodge members or something. But there's prejudice against these people, and there was prejudice against Puerto Ricans. But the Puerto Ricans, after Teddy Roosevelt, they were sort of aligned with the United States. They had been they had conquered and ousted Spain and everything. So they were there, but they weren't real full Americans. They're still, I don't know, they still got a sort of cockamamie situation with the Puerto Rico. And that thing that just hit the other day, a couple of years ago, was just devastating. It's horrible. But they had a unit. It was called the Fighting 65th unit. I'd been trained to fire a cannon. You pull the cannon lever, and the cannon fires and all that. And it was a regiment, about I don't know how many are in a regiment. I forget, 3,000 or something. 1,000?
Sounds right.
No, it might be, yeah, in a regiment. And there was a unit called the 65th. They were at a town called, for those of you from Puerto Rico who might be it was called Calle, about 32 miles outside of San Juan. Beautiful town. I mean, beautiful place. It's gorgeous. It's a paradise, Puerto Rico and everything. But they had been treated to the infamy of the military by an officer who was out of the Point, that is West Point, and was a WASP, and was prejudiced against Latinos. Everybody's got something prejudice against somebody. I don't know. There's so much of that and everything. But they were subject. The people, the men who made up that regiment, were sent to Puerto Rico. They're used to being in Puerto Rico. It's 70 degrees and 80 degrees all the time. They're sent to. It was 20 below zero in Korea. But they were badly. And for the people who understand street talk, in that. They were subject, as a regiment, the enlisted men, to what is called a bad rap.
But what was your role there?
Well, my role was to fill in after a guy out of the Point was like Captain Quigg in Caine Mutiny. The movie was, he was crazy.
Sure.
Crazy and everything. And it was a bad rap that they were accused of being cowardly. And with that, because of that bad rap, it's a lesson, a human lesson, but it was, the unit was disbanded, or the Puerto Rican member were disgraced, and they were disbanded, and they were all cashiered from the Army, from the base, and from the 65th roll. And so then they had to bring in people from, they call them Continentals. I was one of those. I was young. And everything, or relatively, 20 or something. And so we were sent there. And so it was beautiful. It was beautiful weather. And they had a golf course. I like golf. I really like golf. And I was kind of athletic, I guess. And they had a swimming pool and everything. And
so you were being treated like an officer.
No. The non-coms, they called them.
Right.
Were
but you still had access to all these things.
Well, no, yeah, in a way. And then there was a new guy. He seemed to be reasonable. That guy that had run it, I think he was finally caught up with. But the people suffered. So President Obama just recently, they had celebrated, the nation had celebrated military people by the Tuskegee Airmen. There was something else for others and everything for different units, but then they gave a commendation. Oh, and these guys came in, about 3,000 guys, 2,000 or something, to fill in these beautiful barracks, everything. Like I say, they had a golf course, swimming pool, and the weather was gorgeous and everything. And I was part of that. And the guy, the brigadier general, I think, he was there. He said, well, men, and it was peace and everything, so they said, we'll have a swimming team. And I was kind of athletic, and I got on the swimming team. And the world, it was that you could go down to our orders. Is sort of, also, I've had a lot of fun laughing at the world, you know, because it's sort of absurd and everything. And I see a lot of humor and everything everywhere. And anyway, I got, and it came down. They wanted to have, and we got 5 people to be on the swimming team representing the 65th Infantry Unit. And I'm going to reveal this truth now to the world, okay? And so all you young men and women and people who have to deal with various authoritarian structures, which is like the bulk of human institutions in the world, essentially, and everything. But anyway, and thank God for humor. I've always had a good sense of humor, and there's a lot of to be sensible about in a humorous way. But and we were sent there, and the orders were, you will report on your own recognizance. Now you could let somebody like me on your own recognizance. That's a hallelujah. And on your own recognizance, nobody's checking up on you or anything, and you don't have to check up on anybody. To the swimming pool, and there were 5 guys, and you will report, and you will train in swimming as the representative of the 675th Regiment, Artillery Regiment, and they were called the Borincaneers, and that's a term for Boricane was the name of the
original island, yes,
of the island in ancient times. Arawak, I think, I'm not sure, maybe Taino. Taino is part of their tradition. And so we had 5 guys, and we were all foul-ups. I could use a stronger word, but I'll say 5 foul-ups. And we were all bugging out. We didn't care at all about any of the military stuff. We were just getting out of duty, they would call it, or other things that they could have you doing. And we didn't do a thing. We didn't train at all. We just sat around the pool, drank beer, and played poker.
And the anti-hero.
And it was like paradise and everything. Jump in. And we had one guy really good, and then a real good guy from France. In fact, our producer is from France,
right?
And this guy was really good, like a porpoise. He could swim. You know, did you ever see a porpoise swim?
Sure.
It's a work of God. They're so beautiful and everything. It's so sleek and so good.
Potential relatives.
The guy was great. He was a French. We call him Frenchie. I guess he was French. But we were all friends. But we were all bugging out in a sense. And so it came up, and they said, okay, now this might be part of the life story. It came up, we're like in the American League and the National League in baseball. You win here, you win, you win, you win, you win, you win, you win. And then it gets up to where you've got the World Series or something. And by some stroke of something, our team won because of the porpoise, largely because we just went in his wake, really. But he would swim and everything. So we won, and it got up to where the very end, where the very top of the thing. It was all over the island. And so it got up here, and we were going to compete. And we were 5, I'm going to use this not a light term, foul-ups. Real follow-ups and troublemakers and unauthoritarian, not authoritarian people at all. We didn't care. We just wanted to get out of the army, and like that. Not brave or anything. And then on the other side, they had out at the Ramey Field at the end of Puerto Rico, western end, out near Arecibo, I think the town. They had what they called a SAC base, Strategic Air Command,
right.
B-59s. Those were the great big planes that were loaded with atomic bombs. And that was how they were going to be able to extend power to conquer or be the strong man in Latin America in there. And so that was like the establishment. We were the foul-ups. Do you understand the metaphor?
You're beautiful.
We were the foul-ups, and they were the establishment. And so I guess I'm talking about... Anyway, and so we had nothing but 5 guys who had a pair of black trunks. We could hardly get to the damn swimming pool by Publico or something like that. They came, they had cheerleaders, they had pom-pom girls, they had popcorn machines, they had all kinds of bands and everything playing, and they had all the support of the Strategic Air Command and the United States Army behind them, rooting for them to win the final thing. And by a hair's breadth, we won. We won. We won. The five foul-ups. Now that's a lesson. And that's a lesson for everybody to take cognizance of, you know. So
this is soon to be a major motion picture.
Yeah, it should be. It could be, you know, you'd have somebody playing me. I don't know who they could be that fouled up. But anyway, and so it came down. It was really funny because they had a full dress parade. And we had to get in your uniform. And they came and they pinned the, this is way back in, you know, just a kid. And they came and they put the medal on us. They did everything but kiss us on the two cheeks. It was like so absurd and funny. And the sergeants are saying, those foul-ups. So that's part of the story of my life. I kind of like that position. I like to fight for the underdogs.
Yeah, but you did,
and the foul-ups.
You did the same thing when you were a university professor, right?
Yeah, I did. I was terribly undemocratic. I mean, I was terribly, no, I was terribly democratic because I don't like structures very much and everything. I'm no good at it. I'd be a terrible engineer, and you don't want to get me in an operating table or anything where you have to take detail consideration of anything, because I'm just sort of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person and take interest in everything. And so that's what, that was me, like that. And that was part of the experience. Oh, and said, so they did finally, they just ordered President Obama himself. They just honored Puerto Rico 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. They honored a new group. They used to have 4. There were Indians, and there was that, and the new one is the Puerto Ricans, and they had the 65th was honored, so I was part of the 65th,
right?
And I went to Washington, and there was Vice President who is it? Biden, and all the people, and it was Obama blessing it all, and these people, and they had a big celebration right there in the Hall of Congress was a big thing celebrating the Borinqueneers. And if you go to Puerto Rico, there's a lot of people of Puerto Rican background in New York. Yes. If you say Puerto Rico and you're a Borinqueneer, they'll really say, wow, you know. So anyway, but it's reflective also. Essentially I was for the underdog and the rebels and to think different and not deal with detail and not test and not do my lessons like you're supposed to and everything.
It's an honor to be here with a war hero.
Well, I wasn't no war hero, but it was really
at the swimming hall.
I was pretty good, but this guy Frenchie, we call him Frenchie. I mean, he could swim like a porpoise. He was really, really good. And he's the one who did it. You know what I mean? He's the one. We were just sort of so-so.
I've got a question.
Yes, anything. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's fine. How did you get interested in media? How did you get interested in being able to have a program of your own?
That's what I do now. Oh, well, I went and did all this stuff and then became a university professor.
Right.
And everything. And I'm an I guess I would be a candidate for mental illness, really. I'm so anti-authoritarian.
But you have so many competitors.
Yeah, that's true. Particularly, there's quite a few. I had a lot of friends that were, you know, Abby Hoffman was a friend, right. Truly Kupferberg, and a whole lot of artists and things like
Wonderful people.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, well, but I tell you the truth, I just like everybody. I really like everybody. I'm a very friendly guy.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think that comes across on your program. I mean, that is part of your ability to work with so many different people.
I really, you know, my favorite people are like 5-year-olds. 5-year-olds, 4 or 5-year-olds. They're so right straight from God. They're so beautiful. Do you ever notice, you know?
Yeah,
do we pay adequate attention to how good little babies are?
I try to carry little things that will entertain 5-year-olds.
Yeah, right. No, but I got interested in that, and then got interested in things. I'm what they call an autodidact. I'm self-taught, and I'll go and run something down, and I don't want to hear about the lesson about doing this, and you do it that way, and you do it this way. I don't like structure particularly. I just say wing it. I never know what I'm going to say when I open my mouth.
But how did you find your way into
I don't
media?
know for sure. I'm not sure.
Was it because Manhattan Cable had started?
Well,
or
no,
was it earlier than that?
No, that was actually after I got out of the Army and all that, and it was sort of combined with the dawning of media, and I got interested in Buckminster Fuller, an intellectual. I'd read a lot. I'd be reading a lot of people just on my own. And when I'd get something, I'd run it down like a hound dog, and not meeting some requirement that somebody says you have to do and all that. So it's not a good way to be. I don't know if it, but to be successful.
Either that or it's a great way.
Yeah, I don't think it's to be recommended. It's better to mind your P's and Q's, really, boys and girls. You know, if you want to have some sort of a.
But I think the people who are transformative are the ones who don't mind their P's
There may
and
be
Q's.
something said for that, but you also take. You probably cut off some opportunities in the material realm and everything, because the world is very, very structured, you know, and everything. But anyway, I became a university I guess I could pass tests and stuff. So I got degrees in that, and then I got to become a professor at universities. I taught at 5 different universities, different places across the country. So I taught at Southern Illinois University. That's where Buckminster Fuller. I got in touch with Buckminster Fuller and blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then Marshall McLuhan was coming along, and James Joyce, and some of the poets, and all this kind of stuff. So you're following your own lead, not something that they're giving you to follow to make money or to get a contract or something that motivates so much of human behavior. But I did that, and so that leads you into something where you're interested. I'm interested virtually in everything. I'm not wanting to specialize. Now, the academic procedure is almost always to specialize for the masses, so that you can then qualify for a better paying job, or one could say a better paying role of a serf on a feudal estate where all the assets are owned by a small group of people who've hit other people on the head to assume authority for an institutional structure that is authoritarian, essentially.
Or to say it in a slightly different way.
Slightly could be.
What it is that it also allows for people to be trained to live in a past civilization, so that they're not changing and moving it into a new civilization. It's only the ones who buck the types of civilization we live in that transform the civilization.
Maybe it takes all kinds, I think.
Right.
You need all kinds. You need people who do the different things. But I just found it sort of interesting, and I like everybody. I tend to like everybody. I'm really, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't.
Except for commanding officers.
No, I don't. I even like them. It's all part. It's like a big movie you're in. It's a comedy movie, and these people are strutting their stuff and they're doing this and that, and to be able to laugh at it is really a blessing, I think. You know, or no, to mock it, not to mock it. I don't know.
Talking about everybody and everything. I remember that you used to throw some of the biggest parties in all of New York.
Well,
and
I made a lot of friends.
The New York Sun once even had an article about the biggest party in New York and the fact that it was at your own.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of friends, a lot of artists, and a lot of rebels, because that's sort of like a rebel thing. And not straight and narrow and everything. And then this thing came along. Thank God for George Stoney, who started this thing called public access that was coming, and Ted Turner was a great thing.
Oh, yes.
And that was all part of the turn, because the media was coming along, and it was coming along exponentially. It was part of it was just, there's all kinds of things to be interested in, and I fell into it. But I did things at a university, and then also, for those who are old enough to remember, along about 1968, was a time of anti-authoritarianism gone amok almost, or by the youth. And that was partly because it's hard to put your finger on what it was, but it was certainly an objection to the ugly Vietnam War. It was a reaction to that was very deeply felt. Millions of people being killed, literally, by the United States of America. So you begin to trust the bona fides of the United States of America as the leader of the world and so forth as they proclaim it. Not completely and everything, but just sort of in many, many ways. And I was a professor. And I used to get along very well with smart alecky people, you know, or people that were like that. And also I'm very anti-authoritarian. You know, I'm just for everybody. I like everybody. I really almost like everybody, almost without exception, or can try to find a way for liking people. And one thing that makes it possible to do that is if you can resort to humor. Some guy screaming at you or something, and you say, God, you're really acting well. You ought to be hired as the actor of a guy screams well or something, you know, in your mind. You can deal with it, kind of. Do you understand what I mean?
Sure.
Rather than getting all incensed about it, you just and turn it into a soap opera comic scene you're in. If you know, that may be a part of mental illness, maybe. But I was a professor, and I was also anti-authoritarian. And everywhere I went, I was 5 different universities all across the country, and I would go to the area, and everywhere I went, I got fired almost in the first time because I just didn't go to meetings, I didn't pay attention, and I used to do something that was not able to be countenanced or everything like that. What I did in order to get rid of authority, if you're a professor and you got a whole room full of people and they're saying, what can I do? And George Stoney is a great hero of mine. He was the founder of, he was out of the South, a filmmaker, and more than any other person, I think he was responsible for where we are now. It's called Public Access, and particularly Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And he was a filmmaker, and he was a great inspiration to me. And he was older by about 10 or 15 years than me. And he had helped Franklin Roosevelt at the time of the Great Depression, which had been terrible. People were thrown out, grapes of wrath and all of that. And there were a lot of things that were being forced on them, and the injustice of it all was just so blatant and everything. But he made what they call, and he was helping Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt is a hero of mine. He got Social Security going, Medicare, some of the things that would to get everything for the people, rather than it all going to the winners, who essentially it's a zero-sum thing. Whoever, in order to win, somebody else has to lose. It's a competitive, and essentially it's men mostly hitting other men on the head and setting themselves up as the authority figure.
You're
That's
right.
the history of the world.
So he did make it a win-win situation.
Well, no, he did, actually, I guess I'm in the same vein in a sense or something, but I had such respect for him, and he was at NYU. He was here in New York.
George Stoney.
Yeah,
right.
And he was a filmmaker, and he had been coming out of the South, but he was up at the Canadian Film Board, and the Canadian Film Board was ahead in making films, such that we would make here at MNN, or the people would make, rather than Hollywood or somewhere. Where you got big budgets, and that's a whole nother realm and everything. Sure. But he would make these films, and he put on a display of them one time, and they were such good quality. They were really, really good, but they were sponsored films. People had been thrown off the land. They had to adjust to an urban environment. They didn't know what the hell is a town, what's a cement stock. You know, they had all these things to make adjustments, and he helped them ease into the situation that they were being forced to live in because the whole system had fallen apart and disowned them. You know?
Right.
So he was making films to help ease that so that they could live with it.
You said there was something you kept doing as a professor as you went from place to place.
Well, my thing is, I don't know what to say. I don't like systems. I don't like bureaucracies or anything very much. I don't like structure at all. And I seem to be attracted particularly to like the rebels or rebels of thinking.
But you said they were firing you for some reason.
Well, yeah, everywhere I went, I would get fired almost a couple of weeks after I arrived on the campus. You know, it'd be a year contract.
Yeah, you said you had a style that somehow irritated some of these people.
Yeah, No, I was anti-authoritarian, and so what I would do myself, and this you can't have. I understand. There's some people that can't be allowed in polite society or normal society. And what I would do is, because of what they're training people to be answerable to authority on a specialized way of what they call education, on something special, which is going to make it possible for you to get a certificate that's going to allow you to get a job where you can make money teaching. That's what it's about. And or within the broader society. So that's why people that are not favored have to get a degree in something, and you have to listen to the professor and write and do it like he says, and learn how to be a.
Yeah. What was your idea of what your students should become?
I had no idea particularly of it at all, except it was Vietnam was really awful, and the country was almost running asunder. But I would be the professor, and they would come in the class. And George Stoney, I had a great talk with him a few times, and he said, Harold, he was maybe 15 years my senior. I respect seniority.
Sure.
And in particularly when they're of the order of George, he was a wonderful guy. He had friends all over the world, filmmakers and television makers and everything. And
But you had a conversation with him.
He said to me, and he was, actually it's on tape. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, I'm here and I'm ready to teach how to do films and everything. And the students come in, I don't know what was going on in this society. He said, it just seems to be, they come in and they're not at all interested. I may be overdoing it, right?
Sure.
But he was saying something that I was almost genetically able to understand, because it resonated with my value system, or lack of values of a certain order of things. And he said, they don't come in and they don't want to know, how do you make a film that's really effective? How do you deal with the sound? How do you deal with color? All the things that you would learn in making a film, maybe even a Hollywood film or something like that. And they would come in, and it seemed there for a while that they all came in, and the first day they come in, Dr. Stoney, what do I do? And what I want to know, Doctor, I don't care about all your lessons about filters of this and that and how you fade with this and that, and I don't care about what we're going to learn. What I want to know is, what do I have to do, Dr. Stoney, to get an A in this class? I have to get my grade point average up high enough to get into Harvard Law.
Wow.
And I got to get into Harvard Law so that I can have a certificate and a reputation so I can make money. And the focus on getting money was so outer directed, rather than how can I improve myself, how can I do it? It's all about
money.
Or
even how can I learn?
Well, yeah, no.
It wasn't that.
How can I con my way? How can I do anything? But the reason for existence is getting money, and that may be. It seemed that way and everything. So I was that. And what I would do is, the first day every time I'd go to a new school, and it seemed after about 2 weeks in town, my house was filled with all the troublemakers. It was everybody. At this time, there were troublemakers all over the place.
And they were learning in your house.
They did. My little baby crawling around on the ground. You had all these guys, these poets, and all artists and all kinds of stuff. And there was Abby Hoffman time and all kinds, and Allen Ginsberg, a whole array of people. And what I used to do was, they would come into my class. I'd be the authority figure, I guess. I'm a terrible authority figure, because I don't believe in authoritarianism.
Right.
But that's the way the system is organized. And so I guess I'm in opposition or anti-hero to what is the basis of heroism as is defined by the social order.
Although you may have become a hero to some of your students.
Well, yeah, but that's the trash people, I guess, or not the trash, but the creative. I know creative in a certain way, or I don't know. We need all kinds. There's all kinds of people. Probably more snotty in that direction.
But
that useful they might have been. But anyway, what I would do, they would come in and they say, what do I have to do to get an A in the class of geography of Blop? Or whatever it is we're supposed to be teaching something and everything. And I just said, I used to give everybody, I'd come into the class and I said, I tell you what, guys, gals, I want to tell you about this grading business. I'm going to give everybody an A. You've all got your A. Everybody gets an A. I give you an A. You can leave. You got an A. It's going to go in the record. It's going to make it easy to get into Harvard and everything. And so those people that wanted to get into Harvard and everything, they'd leave. And my class would get filled with the smartest people on campus. And they were all troublemakers. That was my experience. The troublemakers would flock there, although they had nothing to do with the class.
Not only that.
And then that would go over into the snack bar and into the saloon and into my living room. Little kids crawling around with these guys, poets with beards and all this kind of stuff, and they're all troublemakers. And we'd be and I did that everywhere I was. So and then it ended up at the time of Chicago. Do you remember the Democratic Convention with Abby Hoffman and what's the other guy?
Jerry Rubin.
Yeah, Jerry Rubin. They were friends of mine, particularly Abby and his wife and everything. And I was in California then, State University of California, Long Beach, and we did that. And then the class. We got doing a lot of stuff, and there were these people that were in the so-called class. Some of them were people that were in the class. There were other people just wander in and out and all that, but they were all this smart guy, that smart guy. They were all smart and everything, but they were also troublemakers and rebels, and probably some of them snotty and, all of that. But it's what you get and everything when you don't have well-disciplined people like that the system would have them become in order to become successful in the society, which is what getting a university education is about for a lot of people. I probably, but anyway, that's what happened. And then out there was a guy that had a guy named Spader. He was a sculptor and in the art department. And he had these sculpture pieces that were done, 12 pieces. It was a master's project. 12 pieces in black wax, over life-size black wax statues depicting various things of the social order. And he had them, and they were lewd. All right, they were depicting things, and they had a big fight. And I'll end this. Okay, I'm sorry. I just have a tendency to talk too much. But it all ended, and Mr. Reagan.
That's the purpose of this particular conversation.
And Mr. Reagan was already in the governorship up in Sacramento, in California, in charge of the university system.
Yes, he certainly.
And as it ended, that whole fracas with the authority, back and forth, about whether these things were going to be allowed to be shown as part of a master's project.
Wow.
But they were thought lewd, because they were. And they were depicting life in America and everything. And it ended up that they ended up seizing them and everything. And then what happened is guy from Korea had been, or from Vietnam, and there ended up being a circle of some of these lewd, so-called lewd
statues,
black, over life-size black wax statues got there, and they said they were going to have them all shown, and they would back down, and they would back down. It was back and forth with Mr. Reagan. He was being directly involved in it as the governor,
sure,
future president.
Yep.
And finally it ended up, and they just came down so strong, and they said, "To hell with all this baloney," and they said, they're going to be off this campus, and they put up a circle of benches on their side like this, and the cops came in, a whole bunch of cops, cops all over the place. And they came in, and my friend Rogan, Dennis Rogan, he had boots, and he had knives in his boots. He was a ranger, fighting over.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah, he was a tough guy, and we both were standing there, and hundreds of students, and it was all over California. They had because there were going to be a whole celebration with bands and everything, and it was all set. They had said, we'll do it. They were playing with us and everything, and we jumped over the bench, and we charged, and we closed down the university at Long Beach. We seized the administration building and closed the whole University of California down. Now, they don't like that when they're running the place and everything like that. And the same thing was going on with Francis Fox Piven and Mark Rudd and other people here at Columbia. They closed Columbia down. They had universities across the country, and they really messed it up.
So that was 68.
Yeah, and they'd be these people, these so-called tough guys, the babies were crawling around on the floor, of the house.
So you were part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and on trouble and everything, and then we had to drive across. We got a gig at upstate New York, and because the word got around that I was, I don't know, good guy. Yeah, no, the underground had some influence then and everything of the people. And so we drove right past Chicago when they had that decisive movement of 68.
Yep.
When they were the Democratic Convention and Abby Hoffman and that were there. And my wife was a lovely lady, really wonderful. We were in a station with a little baby. The baby my mother had come out to be at the birth, and she couldn't do it because I was in jail. They had put me in jail. I was in jail for disturbing the peace or something, which is not,
Celebrating fatherhood.
Yeah, and she's very gentle and everything like that. But I had it, I had it, and we were driving past Chicago on the way to New York, and I was going to go to there, and I wanted to go with my wife. I'm beginning to question my sanity. I guess a lot of this talk you asked me to do is, I guess I'm not really normal. But we drove past Chicago. I wanted to take the babies to the riot, little baby, just born, 2 months. And my wife objected to taking the little baby to the riot in Chicago where the police were all around and everything. That's how crazy I was. And everything.
But just by the way,
so I used to give everybody an A on the first day to get rid of authority.
But in terms of that,
I've only got a couple minutes left.
In terms of that sanity, I just wanted to say that somebody pointed out to me a long time ago that the medicine men of the Indians might not have been considered sane, but they were the people who led the Indians into whole new directions and were able to help them. So sanity and insanity.
Indians? You mean the Indians or the Plains?
The medicine men, yes.
Oh, the medicine men.
Yes.
Well,
they weren't.
That didn't have anything to do
they
with
weren't
me.
Normal. No, all I'm saying is
I
the
wouldn't do no
person who was
drugs
not
or anything.
normal. Well, I would say that when they put you away in prison, and
they didn't put me in jail.
Oh. But you were at least a father at the time, so it was almost like you could celebrate being the father of our country.
Oh well, I don't know. That's going too far. I think the clown. No. But then, and so that's also I got interested. And then I got into public access, where you can be just yourself and you can make programming. And I'm very much interested in the transformation of consciousness that's characteristic of this planet, and want to try and understand it systematically. Systems, not specialized.
And how many programs do you have?
4,000. We got 4,000 hour-long programs.
So if people want to get,
YouTube.
Aside from this one interview, if people want to get a deeper understanding of
Go to YouTube.
They can watch all 4,000 of those programs.
Yeah,
and they'll get a familiarity of you.
4,000 programs.
And some of the greatest thinkers of our time.
That's true. There's quite a list of people, both in the business and in the real business. And so anyway, sorry, I have to round it up. We're running out of time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the variety that we have seen from you and what you brought into cable television is terrific.
I love public access. I love public access and the memory of George Stoney. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
I guess we're getting direction from our eminent Josie Ann is giving us direction.
Thank you so much.
She's gesturing like a clown here. So over and out for now.